What's up, you absolutely Magento loving friends of mine? Joseph from SwiftOtter here with another challenge question. Prove your expert status. This one centers around ensuring business logic continues to function as expected. Uh, for some reason, in my observation, the Magento community might have a little bit of a deficiency in this area. And that deficiency comes back to the fact of how little automated testing is utilized. I think we can do better at that. And something I'm pushing my team on, something I'm challenging myself on, and I think we can. There is room for improvement here. Before we jump into how to approach such a incredibly important scenario, I do want to give a quick shout out. Ravi Mittal from Meet Magento, Florida. He was the one that coordinated the whole conference here last week that I was privileged to attend. He gave these out to at least the speakers. I think maybe the sponsors too. I was privileged to be in both of those camps. But yeah, that's pretty awesome. I like it, and it's cool to be able to highlight that back here. I want to give a massive shout out to those who answered this question. To be honest, we only got 4 answers. Maybe this was a little more challenging than I thought it was going to be. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's a little harder in like writing sentences. I'm constantly pushing people in these conversations to write a response in text, not in like just A, B, or C. Simply because this is about refining our understanding how to approach a problem. So, Miha, Mattia, Danielle, and Mohammed, absolutely fantastic work on this. Big congratulations. I'm impressed with your answers. And so instead of just coming up with my answer on this and sharing this with you, I have combined this and I am giving you kind of the conglomeration of answers back to you, which is ultimately has been my goal to do this. And again, one of the hopes I was looking for in this type of an open-ended question. And in some ways I got it. So this is good stuff. All right, let's look at the question here quickly. You are building a plugin that affects business critical logic. This plugin utilizes store configuration values to affect the workflow. Describe in several sentences how you would ensure this function remains operable through future updates. There's a couple of very key words in this, and obviously this is not exactly the language we would use when talking to other people on our team. Maybe it's a little more practice test question-ish, but at the end of the day, my goal was to see how you in the community would approach this problem. Again, I got 4 answers, better than nothing, and they were way better than nothing because they were fantastic answers. Let's walk through this conglomeration of answers, and I took from each of the 4 of these people as well as myself. And so this answer you're about to see here is not from just Joseph. It is from everyone here. So number 1, the plugin should affect the service contract, not the implementation. So if you are working and you need to affect something, and this what we're talking about, say, is on the order object, we could go straight to the order model and create a plugin there, or much better would be to look at what's available on the order service contract or the order data model. So basically, order interface, and we would then create our plugin against that. And obviously, in our @CDI XML, our plugin type would be that order interface. So we're putting everything against that. Again, in the off chance that would be swapped out in a future or different implementation, but it's possible. And we are seeing some of that with these new services that Adobe is bringing to the Magento or the Commerce platform. So it is a really good idea to use plugins against service contracts. And if they're not used against a service contract, against the actual implementation, for example, that would be the order model. In that case, that would be make sure it's documented very well and has a incredibly clear use case. You're not just taking a shortcut here. Number 2. Ensure plugin failure does not affect the workflow. In fact, I just wrote a plugin here last week that was actually inspired this question. And it was very business critical, pricing related. The first line, I show you the code. I can't do that though, but like the first line of this is literally to say, should I be exiting out of this? Like, should I ignore this capability? So by doing that, this plugin runs I'm going to say in the grand scheme of things, in a very small number of cases. even though it's in a very large pipeline of functionality. So exit as quickly as possible. And in the plugins that I write, I usually like to have the first line or series of lines be, how can I exit out of this plugin as quickly as possible? Return the exact original values that were sent into this. You'll be writing more stable code if you do to implement this. Another one, add a feature switch. There's nothing wrong with 500 store configuration values that are just feature switches. Make sure to document what this is. And in the reality, probably most of them will all be set to yes. But feature switches are just not a bad idea to implement across the board, especially for plugins that are work critical. Utilize integration tests. And this is where I'd like to focus on a little bit more. If nothing else, just to encourage you to do this. Now, I will say we're going to have some more material coming out about integration testing and just testing in general, but utilize these integration tests. These integration tests are very powerful too, and like I said in the original question here, how you would ensure this functionality remains operable through future updates. This is integration testing is key to being able to do this. You see, in this functionality I wrote, that was last week. Yeah. Was it last? Yes, it was last week or 2 weeks ago, something like that. This functionality is guaranteed to work. All I have to do is just run this integration test, and I know whether what's inside the box works or not. Now, one thing that's very critical to remember with integration tests, these are different than unit tests. I prefer integration tests quite a lot over unit tests. And the big difference is integration tests like a section of functionality. So in this case of like this pricing modification that I made in a plugin, the integration test tested this price calculator, if you will, and it gave it a set of inputs and expected a set of outputs. Now, this plugin affected logic inside of this calculator. So I know that from start to finish, based off these inputs, I get this specific output. And I can test it time and time again, and I know it's going to work. Consider it like black box testing. So I'm not testing the method as much as the pathway. And I really like it for that reason. The Magento config fixture is also very helpful. You can use it to test feature switches. You can use it to test anything in store configuration. And you can ultimately then set up a test, set up this value in there, and make sure that it, of course, works as expected. I think it was Mohammed called this one out. Again, a really good comment here. Consider a queue if this is not immediately necessary. So in the case of like a pricing pipeline, this is absolutely necessary. But being creative, there's a good chance to offload this functionality to a queue or some type of, well, I guess that'd be RabbitMQ would probably be the best in most cases. And I love that he called this out. This is really good because there is a lot of cases, my friends, that the queues are underutilized. Now, you might be able to get to the overutilized side, but it's probably pretty rare. Use those queues as much as possible. So, this was, and if you haven't had a chance already, I highly recommend reading through the information here on the LinkedIn page. Read through that and see what were these answers, and of course, hey, while you're at it, like it, etc. The integration testing section in the Adobe Commerce training is really valuable. There is a section that you can see the different annotations, and the Magento config fixture annotation is one of those that is available in that. And as always, I did drop a quick example of how we would be testing store configuration. It's pretty simple. So we can basically we use this annotation, we set our store, the path, and the value on here, and then we can assert that this is equal. So again, this is all pretty straightforward, but using these best practices, you will find great value, and I would say long-term value. It does take a little extra time to get an integration test going, and look for more information from us on that here in the future, but it takes time to get this integration test going, but you are certainly going to thank yourself. And then what's even better is you get that added into your deployment pipeline. Well, actually, at the most basic level, you can add that into your git commit hooks. Before you can commit code, the integration tests work. then you can push it up. You know this is always going to work. Why not? And then, of course, it's also ideal to put in the build pipeline to make sure it's running once it's been merged, etc. Integration tests will save your butt way more than you would ever think they will. So implement that, my friends. Keep up the great work, and let's look forward to another question here coming up next week.